So, a few weeks back, the dust had barely settled on the final 9th edition Codex release, a moment I'd patiently been waiting for. You see, it would enable me to review and rank a complete set of combat patrol boxes. But then the bombshell hit. The long-rumoured 10th edition was right round the bleeding corner. Amidst all the furore and excitement of the simplified not simple, or whatever the tuppeny they're coining it rule set, there came a sweet, golden tidbit that perfectly aligned with my original intentions. Combat patrol games would now be as simple as you buy a box, you build its contents and put them on a battlefield, and the balancing gods would do the rest. Now, they've teased information on how they'll do this with the contents of the Space Marine and Tyranids introductory boxes, but assuming these combat patrol boxes don't get replaced in the short term, we still have a video we can bring to you. That being a fine ass critique of what boxes brings the best value for money and which do you, the consumer, a comparative disservice. But with 24 boxes to critique, we're actually going to conveniently make 2 videos out of it. With this here, the first highlighting the very worst that GW expect you to cough up your hard earned for. This is truly the dregs and cream of the crap. We've also got some stats to back this subjectivity up so that we can at least pretend this is actually objective and empirical data that simply cannot be argued against and thus is scientific fact. Our criteria for ranking these is threefold. 1. Quantity of plastic. I use that particular language because one dreadnought does not equal one Termagon, and so larger and more intricate models, including infantry-sized characters, have been weighted accordingly. Second is points cost. Remember, power is going the way of the dodo in 10th edition, and so we'll just be using base points plus about half of the available upgrades as our metric. Finally, we have the all-important cost and saving. Yes, all of these boxes, even our last piece of garbage, are cheaper than buying the plastic separately. But at the end of the day, comparatively trash is still garbage. Okay, so I've preambled far too long already. Will you please join me as I count from 24 to 1? Well, there had to be a wooden spoon in this whole affair, and to be clear how scientific this list is, it's my favoured sons, the Space Wolves. My poor Star Vikings got absolutely gerd-mullered with this selection. Putting aside the fact that this is a terrible box for anything other than someone starting a new army, you've got the 75th moulded Primaris Lieutenant. The Intercessors and Reavers are straight vanilla, and it's really only the Invicta tactical warsuit that threatens to flutter the loins. Quick caveat as well, all these Loyalist Space Marine boxes come with upgrade frames that I simply refuse to acknowledge. They are not needed. They are a luxury to add some faction livery to your shiny new models, and I say no. Give it away for free or subsidise the cost. Their overall score then should say it best. This is about as dire as combat patrol boxes get. And to emphasise my point, this is the only starter product for my beloved Fenrisians that I have never picked up. Up next, and don't worry, you can count, the Black Templars are the first ever joint entry in at number 22. Slightly less of a starter set this, even though it's still able in that category. But really it's just the inclusion of the Impulsor that stops me from hating this box with a passion. The Primaris Marshal is basically just a captain, FYI, and a 10-man Primaris Crusader squad is a cousin once removed from Primaris Assault Intercessors. And this is what throwing the Codex Astartes out the window looks like. There's a splash more value for money here and a teensy tiny bit more plastic to consume, but really this is still firmly ensconced F-tier jank. A shame really for the one successor chapter that has its own product line. Joining them in the darkest pits of product hell are the toters of the ugliest of ugly greens, the Dark Angels. The Primaris Chaplain is an interesting touch, but I'm not sure that would be most people's choice if this were a starter set. Still, I'm not marking it down subjectively for that. The 3 Inceptors are cool enough, and the Intercessors do what Rank and File does, which is to make up the numbers. Speaking of which, this is empirically the worst combat patrol box in terms of volume of plastic, so that's a nice string to its bow. On a more positive note, it's nice to see the ultimate incarnation of modern dreadnoughts, the Primaris Redemptor, here, and really, much like the Impulsor in the Black Templars box, this is the centrepiece, and the only thing that brings the wow. The rest just doesn't warm the cockles. It seriously is like we're alternating between conventional Space Marine chapters and then not. Number 21 on our list is the Xenos Hunting Death Watch, which on the one hand have a cool bloody name, and on the other have been given the gift of this wall of watching paint dry infantry. This is actually a fairly decent starter set for the watch if you ignore everything else comparatively wrong with it. A lieutenant is a fine enough low points HQ, but the apothecary is a bit overkill at this breakpoint. Still, 10 instead of 5 intercessors gives you some flexibility at the cost of upping the tiers of boredom count, and the aggressors, well, getting them into position can be tricky, but they're a cool unit. Still, we are stuck in the mire with these consecutive Marine boxes. Granted, the Death Watch upgrade sprue has a bit more usefulness here, but I still say no for scoring purposes, and here we are with an F for foul. Ooh, is it going to be something other than Marines? No. Now we're chaos hunting in the darkest depths of Combat Patrol product garbage. Still, let's see how long we can be glass half full here. All of these Space Marines are faction specific sprues, so no upgrade frames. That's the good part. And the librarian sets the stall out for psychic shenanigans. I actually quite like this as a starter product. It feels very elite, but ultimately that's what G Knights are. The Strike Squad, which can also be built as 3 other types of elite choices, and the Terminators are rock hard geezers with psychic attunement. Oh, and look Timmy, we have another centrepiece in the form of the somewhat gangly Nemesis Dreadnought. There's some good stuff here, but this is second only to the Dark Angels in terms of volume of plastic, and the saving you make is fairly paltry in comparison. But still, look, we're now hitting the dizzying heights of E tier, so bloody hell, onwards and upwards. Another joint entry this time at number 18 is, you guessed it, another Loyalist Space Marine box. How much of this detritus do we gotta wade through? Still, this is much tidier looking than the last one to feature an Impulsor, the Black Templars. I do like me a Psyker HQ. In part it opens up the Psychic phase and broadens the game. Even with the Psychic phase going bye-bye in 10th edition, it's still cool as Donald Duck to sling spells in the 41st millennium. The triumvirate of foot-slogging Marines with the Intercessors, Incursors and Aggressors will do what you expect and give you a solid foundation. And in that way, this is a clear step up in terms of value and volume of plastic from all the other Marine boxes so far. It's even packing the upgrade frames like the others, so who knows? I'll take comparatively good alongside still just plain bad all day long. Their companion at rank number 18, if you can believe your eyes, is not a Loyalist chapter. It is Space Marines, but of Tzeentch worshipping chaos variety. The hybrid Infernal Master is nice to see because it was a new addition in the last codex, and the Scarab Occult Terminators are second only to Rubric Marines in being iconic to the T-Sons. But where I personally have a problem with this box is that 20 Zangors do not a happy collector make. Although we're starting to edge towards the middle of the pack in terms of these rankings, this is G-Dub at its laziest. It really is the volume of plastic that's propping this ranking up. Okay, there might be a time when you would field this many chaff ranking file, but ultimately this inclusion makes little sense as an introduction to the Thousand Suns. Not only is it E tier, but I'm also shaking my head in disappointment, even though you can't see me doing it. Sitting not so pretty on their own in 17th place is another branch of the Imperium, the Adeptus Mechanicus, who are, to be fair, packing some variety in model size and shape. Kudos for that. A Tech Priest Engine Seer is a perfectly serviceable choice to lead your army, and the Rangers ensure the model count isn't in the toilet range. You've then got the very opposite in the troop slot, 3 Cataphren Destroyers to do what big hulking robots do, and bring eliteness to your rank and file. Having an Onager Dune Crawler to provide some heavy support is also very welcome. Part of the problem with this box though, and it's an AdMech problem as a whole, is that they cost a lot for the points they bring to the table, and that's even in a group with Skitarii in it. As such, they're not as good as perhaps they first look, which is why we have one final entry in D tier. We then welcome stage right our first Xenos entry, another one of my faves getting the royal shaft. Somewhat strangely, there are no Necron warriors, but as a supplementary addition to your Necrons collection, that makes the choice pretty win. Still, their substitute, the beefed up Immortals, are an able replacement. Plus, they're multifunctional sprues, which is always nice. Having an Overlord with a noble keyword unlocks the whole codex, even though that'll probably no longer be a thing in 10th edition either. And with the Tomb Blades mixing things up and the ability to take the Scythe as the Knight or Doom variety, depending on if you want transport capacity or big heavy weapons, there's all sorts of welcome choices within the box. That being said, the volume of models is the main thing holding it back. Even though the relevant saving is adequate, we're still looking at below average overall. And now it looks like we've unlocked the keys to alien species. Why not follow up with the first of our joint entries at number 14, the Dark Elves themselves, the Drukhari. If a picture can tell 1,000 stories, well then it doesn't look too shabby at first glance. Plenty of infantry and a couple of sweet floating vehicles, and that's true. An able leader with the Archon and some melee beat sticks with the Incubi. You've then got a unit of 10 rank and file Cabalite warriors to round the infantry out. But then it's really the duo of a Raider and Reaver that are the standouts. Much like the Doom and Night sides for the Necrons, you've got a choice of less gunpower but place your infantry to get taxied within the Raider, and a more firepower centric gunship in the Reaver. But here you don't have to pick one or the other. The best thing about this box, other than the decent amount of variety, is that the value savings are starting to get a bit more meaningful. So fair play. We're still on balance just the wrong side of average though. Speaking of the wrong side of average, our other entrant at number 14 is here because, well, some metrics it's good at, others not so much. So what does it do well? Well, Command Squad, check. 5 models to make up a HQ is a nice change of pace. For 20 of anything I've already been critical of in this breakdown, but it works okay for me here with the Cadian Troopers. They're pretty disposable, but also your main choice for your cheap chaff. The Armoured Sentinel, which you can make a Scout Sentinel, is not quite the wow factor some other armies can bring in, but this is still a neat unit, and the Ordnance teams are like something from historical wargame in grimdark style. So, model count wise, this is pretty great. That is more than enough to occupy you at the paint station, and the saving on the models is acceptable. But it's the points. There is literally no way you can polish the turd that is sub 400 points for this group of models. No way whatsoever. Which is pretty much the exclusive reason why this is sitting in D tier. For our last entry in this first part of our Combat Patrol breakdown, we're talking Chaos Space Marines. How fitting that a Space Marine box is the last of our below average offerings. I quite like the Dark Apostle and his 2 Disciples, and some priestly action is a nice way to start. The Chaos Space Marines show real intent that this is a starter type box set. The Havocs as well bring the heavy support and bring it good. And rounding out with the Dreadnought by any other name, the Hellbrute, it's all sorts of safe and steady for a box like this. But I suppose the biggest criticism of it is it's a little bit uninspiring. There's some blockbuster sets coming up in the next part, yet this brings a meh plastic count and a surprisingly ho-hum saving, which is why we fall just short of 50% and become this our last entry in D grade. Whoa, what a cliffhanger! We've successfully inhaled, digested all the plastic offal we can stomach, and ended with the cream on top of said excrement. It's onwards and upwards in the next part though. Only cool cats need apply for the top half of this list. Alas, for now we say Auf Wiedersehen. I've been the voice in your head, and this video has ended.